All right, welcome everybody back to The Penalty. I am your host, Trevor Cherney. Thank you so much for joining us once again for another edition of The Penalty. Let's get right into it. So obviously, look, we'll talk about the Lions and Bengals. Go after what happened in that game. There's not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, look, Lions took care of business, right? We'll talk about that game for a little bit. We'll talk about a little bit of the Detroit Tigers as well. They actually, to my surprise, they actually won their series against Cleveland, and now they move on to the and now they're in the ALDS. They're tied with the Mariners. So yeah, so we'll talk about that. And then a little bit towards the end of the show, we'll talk about also to the current state of the Michigan State Spartans and where things are going. And man, when I tell you that's a hopeless situation, yeah, that's pretty bad. So, anyways, so yeah, let's get right into it though. This should be a really heavy packed show. And like I said, this should be this should be pretty good. So let's get right into it, shall we? Lions and Bengals. Look, Lions take care of business. For them, this was very much a business trip. And they needed to, and they won. Was it pretty? No. I'm not going to pretend it was, especially towards the end, But look, nowhere in that game was I worried they were going to lose, right? I mean, the Bengals are just bad, and that's actually what I jotted down my notes was, look, Lions are good, Bengals are bad, right? First and foremost. I mean, the Bengals, first of all, they're without Burrow. And part of that is because they can't protect their quarterbacks because that offensive line is a sham. I mean, it is that offensive line is a disgrace. Like, how in five seasons you've had Joe Burrow, and now one of those 5 seasons you gave him a decent offensive line. How? How is that possible? You have a Hall of Fame quarterback in Joe Burrow, okay? Mind you, when Joe Burrow's healthy and Joe Burrow has protection, there's not a singular better quarterback on the planet than Joe Burrow. Prove me wrong. Like, yeah, okay, you can go, yo, what about Mahomes? What about this? What about that? Again, Mahomes is really good. All right, I'm not going to, and there's nothing to do with Mahomes, okay? But it has everything to do with Joe Burrow, how good he is. And Joe Burrow was really good. I'm a massive Joe Burrow fan myself. I think he deserves so much better than what he's given right now in Cincy. If I were Burrow right now, okay, as it stands today, if I were Burrow, I probably wouldn't do it right now, but probably sometime after this season, sometime this offseason, I would go to the Bengals owner and I would just be like, hey, look, I've enjoyed my time here, but things aren't working out. My offensive line is completely terrible. It's useless. The coaching is a joke. Do the Bengals even have a GM? I don't even know. That's a joke. I know they do a GM, but still, I want to give me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. See, but Joe Burrow, he's not going to do that though. Unfortunately, he's probably going to run Cincy either until he's no longer able to physically perform, like Andrew Luck, and retire early in his career, or who knows? Maybe one day he'll finally be like, you know what? Please get me out of here, just please. So, because honestly, that's the best thing that could happen to Joe Burrow. Is him finally standing up on his own and being like, enough is enough. I want out. And I don't know if that's going to ever happen, but we'll see. Look, the bottom line is that the Bengals are not good. They're not a good organization. They're not a good ownership. They don't do many things well, right? The Bengals don't do anything particularly well. They don't build from the line of scrimmage. They have alienated their best players on the team. Like, that's what bad teams do. You know? And the Bengals are a bad team. They have become that. And the Bengals did it to themselves. And they have been able to cover it up for so long for the past couple of years because they have Joe Burrow. Okay? But now you're seeing the effects of when you don't have Burrow on the field healthy, this is what happens. Okay? That defense is horrendous. Don't get it twisted. The Lions should have scored 50 on them. But they didn't. That's how bad that defense is. Really. That defense is atrocious. Another disgrace. That offensive line, that defense, all a disgrace. And again, if I were the Bengals, I would fire Zach Taylor right now. You gave this guy too much time for this team to look like this. For him to coach this team this way is ridiculous. I mean, come on. It's a disaster. They look, the Bengals, what they should do this offseason is clean house. They got to fire the GM. They got to fire their coach. They need to clean house the whole thing. The whole thing needs to get cleaned house and gone. Coaching, front office, everything must go. And again, I would consider trading Burrow this offseason. I would. Imagine how many draft picks you would get. What you would get in return for Burrow. That would jumpstart your rebuild by a long shot. And sure, you may not be good for a couple of years, but not being good for a couple of years beats not being competitive over and over and over and over. And the only reason why you are competitive is because of Joe Burrow. That is it. That is it. All because of Burrow. So, anyways, Lions are good. Bengals are bad. Lions are a well-run organization. Lions have real coaching. Lions have a real front office. And the Bengals just don't have any of that. And it shows. You saw what happened Sunday. It wasn't pretty. And honestly, the final score doesn't indicate how not close that game was. It wasn't even close. There you go. That's all I got to say. Bengals are a mess. The Lions are a good team. And the Lions have a real challenge this week with the Chiefs. We'll get more into that as the week goes on. Let's get into the Detroit Tigers in the playoffs. So I predicted, last show I predicted that they're going to win the School Bowl Star, which they did. But I also predicted they would lose the next two starts, or the next two games, and they would end up being out of the playoffs. Well, that didn't happen. They did end up losing the next game after the School Bowl start, but then they rallied back to win the series and to win the another playoff series in a second consecutive year in a row, which is, hey, at this point, for how bad the offense is, how bad the lineup is at times, that I can't complain too much, right? But look, I mean, right now they're playing the Mariners. The series is tied 1-1. They've looked fine at times, but their offense is just so brutal to watch sometimes because the amount of uninspiring at-bats you get from various players is ridiculous. The amount of swings and misses you get, the amount of just instantly the count is 0-2, just like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. You really have to wonder what this team is doing at times. Now, look, their pitching. Their pitching has been good as can be, right? Under their circumstances, they have. I really can't complain about the pitching too much. It's been the hitting that's been the problem for this team, for the wild card series and now for the divisional series. And now, look, even if they somehow win this series against the Mariners, okay, let's say they win the ALDS. Cool. You're not winning the LCS. You're not winning against the Blue Jays. No. And the Yankees don't get me started. Yankees are out. But they're not mathematically out. But basically, that whole Yankees team is checked out, though. You're not going to face the Yankees. It's going to be the Blue Jays. You really think you're being the Blue Jays with that lineup? Even if I think you have better pitching than the Yankees, you're not being the Blue Jays. In a 7-game series, you're just not beating them. That's just factual. Now, maybe I'm wrong again. Maybe you could beat them, but your lineup against the Mariners are putting together uninspiring, uncompetitive at-bats. And I'm supposed to tell you that I feel comfortable with this team winning a 7-game series. Not true. I really don't. I don't think they're winning a 7-game series. They could win a 5-game series because you can pitch Skubal 2 times and you have that advantage. But in a 7-game series, nah, man, that's too much to ask for. I can't ask this team to win a 7-game series. So, look, they might win against the Mariners, which would be cool. But, at the same time, I don't see this team going further in the playoffs than the ALCS. So, would it be a cool story? Yeah, I guess it would. But also, too, hey, at the end of the day, it is what it is. The Tigers are just not a good offensive team. They have little to no power. They don't hit for average. They don't hit with runners in scoring position. You see, that's the problem too. See, if they could actually hit with runners in scoring position, it would be much better. It would be much better. It would be a much different look. But they can't. So great. You know what? Hey. If they win against Mariners, if they go to ALDS, you know what? Anything beyond that, I guess, would be a cherry on the top. Because, honestly, this team just isn't very good. In my honest opinion, this team just isn't. Yeah, like I said, they're not very good. They're okay. At times, they can be good. But for the most part, they put together uninspiring, uncompetitive at-bats. You have no clutch players on this team, aside from maybe, like, Gary Carpenter and Riley Green. You have no stars. No superstars in this team besides like Skubal. I'm not quite ready to say Riley Green is a superstar. He could be climbing to be one, but I'm not ready to say that quite yet. So yeah, Tigers. Hey, I mean at this point, it is what it is. I'm preparing for the worst case scenario, which is they just lose and that's it. So for the second year in a row, they lose in the ALDS. So again, if they get to the LCS, great, Like last year. But if they don't, hey, I guess that'll make Chris Ilitch, actually spend money this time around, right? And actually, maybe Scott Harris can get I don't know, maybe this time get Alex Bregman, maybe. I hope so. We'll see. And then finally, let's get to a team that I've been dreading to get to all show long. The Michigan State Spartans and their football program, which at this current point in time is as irrelevant can be. How do you have a week off? You have a bye week. You have basically 2 weeks to prepare for Nebraska. And you look like that. How? How can that happen? What a disgraceful performance that was on Saturday. And I know it was at Nebraska and everything, but I don't care. Nebraska's not that good. Any decent team should be able to beat Nebraska. I know you're gonna have people disagree with me and whatnot, and that's fine. But Any decent team should be able to beat Nebraska. Okay? Nebraska isn't that good. Their quarterback is a weirdo. Their quarterback is somebody who is he's a wannabe Patrick Mahomes. Okay? Great. It looks like him. He dresses like him. His mannerisms like him. Okay, cool. Whatever. Their defense is not even good. And yet, when they face the Michigan State Spartans, I mean, talk about just a disingenuous, disgraceful, disgusting, whatever adjective you can use against this team, you can. Just terrible. It's just terrible. I mean, Aiden Childs easily had his worst game of the year. The defense was inept. That front seven is just awful. I mean, come on. How can you go out this year with that kind of front seven and you get no pressure? You get no pressure. You get absolutely nothing going. I mean, look, as much as I would love just to blame Joe Rossi for this, it's the roster too. What good edge rushers do you have in this team? Like, what? What talented edge rushers do they have in this? Who's somebody who can stop the run in this team? What NFL-type player do you have on that defense? You have nobody. You have some good players on offense, but even then, they're not a good team. They're actually pretty bad. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan State went winless for the rest of the year. Do you really think now, with UCLA defeating Penn State and getting their first win of the year, do you really think it's going to be an easy win now for Michigan State at going against UCLA? No. Honestly, they might win. They might lose that because Michigan State. They might lose that game because Michigan State is that bad. They're a terrible organization, a terrible football program. They're a disgrace in the Big Ten, an absolute disgrace for D1. I try to give Jonathan Smith some time, okay? I gave him last year, okay? Last year was bad. It was bad for everybody, okay? I get it. Last year was last year. Whatever. This year, he had to go out and make some actual improvements to the team. Go win a couple of meaningful games. Nope. What does he do? And your two meaningful games of the year against UCLA or against UCA or UC. Sorry. To Nebraska and UC. You lose both times. And between those games was a bye week. You wouldn't be able to notice. It's honestly a shame. It's a complete sham of what this team is. It's a complete sham that this team's even in the Big Ten. Come on. This team would struggle in the MAC. I'm not even joking. This team would struggle in the MAC. Like, Jonathan Smith needs to go. I'm tired. I'm over the Jonathan Smith era and the experiment. It's done. It's over with. The guy's a bum. The guy shouldn't be here. He needs to go. Get him out of here. Look at the roster he's put together. Awful. Look at the way he coaches. He's as bland as milk toast. He's beyond bland. He has no personality. He has no charisma. He has nothing. Nothing. He's awful at his job. Get him out of here now. He can go coach somewhere else. Not here in East Lansing. Go. Shoo. Go back to Oregon State. They ought to launch this cat out of a cannon to go back to Oregon State. How about that? Ridiculous. I don't know what this guy's doing here. Seriously. What is he doing here? What does he do well here? Tell me. He doesn't recruit. He barely gets anybody from the transfer portal. He doesn't hire good coaches. Look at Joe Rossi. I was told, this guy has, can bring an elite defense. Really? Has this looked like an elite defense to you? Huh? No. I'm done. Fire this guy. Fire him. I mean, really, how do you, when Michigan State hired a new AD, mind you, the AD that hired you in Alan Haller is no longer employed at Michigan State. So now you don't have the support of the new current AD because he didn't hire you. I mean, what is this? What are we doing? Come on. You really think that if you miss another bowl game this year, that if you only have 4 or 5 wins on the year, which by itself is just absolutely just terrible, unexcusable to have those amount of wins, do you really think you're keeping your job? Do you really think you deserve to keep your job with that kind of sham of performance? With the current state of the program, which, by the way, it has never been more irrelevant? Here's the thing. I grew up watching this team winning Big Ten championships, right? I grew up watching this team year to year win against Ohio State, win against Michigan, take care of the Big Ten, at least be in the playoff. And now this team, they struggle to beat a MAC school. That's what this program is in 2025. How if you're Mark D'Antonio and if you see the current state of the program, I don't know how you make some calls and be like, we got to do something about this. What are we doing here? Nope. Mark D'Antonio doesn't care. And you know what? Honestly, at this point, we need to move on from Mark D'Antonio. Mark D'Antonio was already 10 years ago. Okay? That was the last really good Mark D'Antonio season was 2015. Okay? Let's not kid ourselves here. All right? It's time for Michigan State to make some big boy moves. Okay? They got to fire Jonathan Smith. And they need to hire somebody who can do a real job, who can do a real good job here, who can actually recruit, who can actually get into the transfer portal, get a couple of kids from there, and let's get going. Come on. Let's win some games. It shouldn't be this difficult in this landscape of college football. Look what Indiana has done in a year. In the same season, they hired Curt Cignetti as their head coach. They're in the playoffs. This year, okay? Now look, last year could have been a fluke for Indiana. It happens, okay? It could have been a fluke for Curt Cignetti. Nope. This year, they're the 7th-ranked team in the country. Like, come on. Why, as Michigan State, are they making it so hard on themselves? Do you realize how easy it is nowadays to hire a coach and to basically flip your program in basically less than a year? Come on. Indiana's not Ohio State. They're not Michigan. They're not Penn State. Like, they're in Indiana. They have been a joke for years. But finally, they got somebody who was a real head coach and who did, actual things, like taking people from the transfer portal, like recruiting people, actual bodies. I'm not saying go and hire Curt Cignetti, but hire somebody with a brain. Hire somebody who can actually recruit. Hire somebody who can go in the transfer portal and get somebody. Come on. It can't be that difficult if you're Michigan State. You have the money. You have the pedigree. Put it all together. Now, I'm sorry. I got a little carried away there. I got a little carried away there. Michigan State, man, just terrible. I mean, I don't know how you can be. It's hard for me to be a fan each and every single week. Like that loss against Nebraska was just disgusting. Michigan State ought to be ashamed of themselves. Just a shame. All right. Well, anyways, that'll be it for this edition of The Penalty. Thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Please share as well. I would really appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a great day. I'll catch y'all later.